Welcome back to Kronos Airsoft. We're here at R.I.F.T Airsoft for the 2018 Scorpion Evo Owners Club event. Okay, so now we're at the ASG. I'm going to call it the tech stand because we're here with Jeppe, who's come over from Denmark as one of the ASG technicians, and he's going to give us a bit of information about what he does over there.
Right, my name's Jeppe. I work at ASG as a technician. What that means is that, first of all, we repair the products that come back from retailers, and we offer support for our retailers, technical information, anything. If they need parts, they get it from us. Another thing we do is that we also apply our knowledge on Airsoft in general to the products. So if there is a flaw in a product, it does happen sometimes, the technicians sit down, analyze it, maybe find a solution, and then we work with the manufacturing plant to implement that solution and see that it actually gets carried out in the end product. And there's a lot of more considerations during that process, but that's what we do as technicians as well.
It's nice to hear that you're not just, oh, let's just fix it and send it back. You know, you're actually putting some thought into what you're doing so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of thought put into that. People think that quite often distributors, they just rebrand stuff, but there is actually a lot of work that goes into constant measuring the quality, making sure that things are manufactured right, and so on. So.
Fantastic. Bringing it back to the Evo, seeing as we're at the Evo event, makes it pretty pertinent. Just give us a bit of information about the technical aspect of the gun. I mean, we all know it's a fantastic gun, it works well, it shoots straight, which is great. But just give us a bit more technical information if you can, just you know, the reasoning behind why it's so good.
Well, one of the reasons that it is good is, again, turning back to the same thing, we have a very on-point technical quality assurance and knowledge. So us technicians sit right next to the assembly line, and actually one of the technicians control the assembly line and the quality. So we have a very tight control of how well does it shoot, is it within spec, is anything off, it gets taken to the side and it doesn't go out the door. So it's not just the quality of the gun itself, it's we make a great point of avoiding any slip-ups. The product itself, why is it great? Obviously it's got complete digital control inside of it, so you get the full side control. That feature's been on the market for a long time now, but when the Evo came out, it was one of the first rifles to have this, plus a neodymium motor, which is a very strong motor that starts and stops very fast, so you get a very snappy trigger response. That combined with the empty mag stop feature and the very short trigger movement made it a great gun for people who want to do tactical wargaming. But the product is solid as well, so you can just go out there and dump high cap after high cap because it doesn't overstress itself, it doesn't pull a ton of current or run itself down, it'll run for a long time. Another great part about it is the hub-up unit and the nozzle assembly. This is one of the most accurate and airtight guns ever made on a consistent basis. Generally, not with the short barrel, but with the longer barrels, you see the full potential of the spring setup. If you put in, say, a 1 joule spring, it's not uncommon to get 1.3, 1.5 joule out of it with the right barrel setup. And you get that with the stock parts, basically, which is amazing. It saves techs a lot of money.
Saves you bother having to do any upgrades and things.
The amount of time I've spent fine-tuning Jeppe plates and nozzles and hop-up units and all that, and you don't have to do that with an Evo. You use the stock parts every time, it works. But you still have the option to change barrel, bucking, so on, and fine-tune that to your needs, because it is a stock gun. It works great, but if you want to go out there and shoot like .43 or something, you might need to fine-tune to your to the way you want.
Just bringing it back to the most recent revision, the 2018 version of the Evo. What I mean, you're going back to talking about the technicians and constantly looking at the quality control and any issues that may arise and things like that. So you've revised, or ASG have revised the Evo now with this 2018 version. Just take us through a little bit of the thought process behind that. What's changed and why?
Well, basically, the gearbox was rebuilt, if that makes sense. So obviously, it fits in the same Evo with the same parts and so on, but it was redone partially for manufacturing purpose, because the way it's done now is easier. The first one required a ton of effort to manufacture. This one is simply designed with more knowledge, honestly. And the product is a lot better, the gearbox. Because we changed everything, we had the option to fine-tune tiny changes like the placement of the selector grooves that holds the selector plate has been fine-tuned as much as possible. So it's not that they didn't work before, they worked fine before, but now they're easier to assemble now. A lot of the focus on the new gearbox has been how easy is it to assemble, and it is easier to assemble, and anyone who works with the new gearbox will recognize that pretty fast, pretty quickly. Another thing as well is it's slightly heavier and it's got slightly more material to it, so it absorbs sound better. The piston impact you won't hear as much. You don't have like an echo inside the gearbox or the rifle itself. It might also absorb slightly more of the gear sound, but mainly the piston impact, and you will definitely hear the difference between the old and new one immediately when it comes to that. Spec-wise, they are both meant to fulfill the same specs. So it's not like the new one is like, oh, it's so much better, and it's not like necessarily an upgrade in that matter. We did make it better in some ways, but people shouldn't feel that the old gearbox is in any way inferior. There are a lot of reasons why the new gearbox is being made. So we have the new cylinder, made with, very important, ASG-shaped ventilation hole.
We did, we've done a takedown of the 2018, and we did spot that, the little detail there, which was nice.
Yeah. New cylinder head, still more or less the same design with plastic cylinder head with metal nozzle. But the bumper pad absorbs more energy than before, and you can definitely hear that as well. It's more quiet. It's also got a system that allows you to take the bumper pad off and put it back on. It's not glued on. It's locked in place, or rather, it's not locked in place, but it sits around here, and when you put it into the cylinder, that locks it in place. It's very simple and very solid system, and that prevents it from ever falling off. You're not dependent on glue as part of the production or anything. I think that is actually one of the coolest changes, and we're definitely going to see more of that in the future. I like that system.
And I'm assuming the spare bumper pads are going to be readily available?
Yes, I don't know. I don't know. I think.
But it's a nice feature to have. Yeah. It means you don't have to replace the whole thing.
The design is set, and we'll see what happens. But we all like it.
Yeah.
So the new piston, very importantly, ASG logo. Yeah. So in case the piston falls out of your gearbox, you know which one it is. And again, we're turning back to. It's not necessarily a million times better. It also has to do with how we manufacture and so on. So there's some reasons behind the scenes sometimes. But it is a cooler piston. It's got more it's got more metal teeth on it than before. The piston head as well is slightly thicker than normal. Distance is still right and everything, and that also works very well.
Fantastic. So, and then obviously you've mentioned all the gearbox differences as well. One thing we noticed, what this was a nice touch, was the altered cable guides on the outside of the gearbox.
Exactly.
They're no longer teeth that are going to eat away at the cables.
That did require some attention during assembly sometimes, and it is a lot easier now to wire to guide the wires correctly in these channels. Definitely easier. And another thing as well, that there's tons of things that was modified during the design of this. Tested many gearbox shells. But this groove right here that holds the selector plate was very finely modified, along with the holes and everything, to make sure it sits as optimal as possible within the production means. So.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing some of the more technical insight into that. I don't think we've got any more questions, so we shall let you get about the business, and hopefully you have a safe trip back to Denmark.
Yeah, thanks.
No worries. Cheers. See you again.